Good evening and welcome to This House of Musicians with your host, singer, songwriter, and founder of the band, Inner City Outlaws, the Baritone Bear, Barry Smith, right here on Reality Radio 101. To get on board, send us an email right now. Our email address is thishouseofmusicians@gmail.com.
Rockin' day. The classy chassis way.
And now, right to your host of This House of Musicians, Barry Smith.
Hey, welcome, fine listener, to This House of Musicians radio show on Reality Radio 101. We hope you enjoy the next hour with us as we do our small part to help promote musicians, bands, and, of course, Gary, venues. Gary, how are you?
I'm excited tonight.
Yep, me too. It's just we have an amazing guest, rock star from back in the day. Always will be a rock star. I went and did a live interview with him a couple of summers ago. I'm going to say it was, and he still sounded absolutely amazing. Folks, I'm talking about the one and only Mr. Edmund Pilling from the band Fludd. Ed, how are you, bud?
Just lovely. How are you doing?
Doing quite well. I appreciate you doing the show. This is your second visit. So what I want to do is briefly touch for the new folks that are listening on Fludd and the early days briefly, and then I'd love to talk about the Cat Stevens days, and then we'll then I want you to tell us some great rock star stories. We all love hearing those kind of stories. How does that sound, buddy?
Oh, that sounds like I'm liable.
Good. Well, you are liable right now, sir. So I want to hear about early days of Fludd.
Actually, one of the things, when you and I spoke the other day, and because we had spoken previous, and I'm not sure how many things we talked about on that particular occasion, but I don't think we mentioned this, only because, I sent it, I think I sent the link to you. The most interesting thing I've seen about Brian and I, outside of Fludd, is that because of where we actually started, and the Pretty Ones were certainly in Toronto when we were young with Greg Kodovitz, and I was playing drums then, and not a front man, but I was still singing, but I didn't stand in front. Anyway, when Brian and I decided to go back to Birmingham, which is where we were born, because I told him I'd gone over there a little while earlier. And we're talking 16, 15 years old here, by the way.
That's awesome.
Yeah, not great business minds of the world, just a passion.
Yeah, just having fun.
Well, it's really interesting to me, Barry. It must be to you. That's my job. I want to do that. It's not just having fun. I gotta do this properly. And
sure.
And that was the driving part of it, because we were brought up that way anyway. You're gonna do something, you do it right.
So even at 15 and 16, you had that integrity to know that we have to be professional when we're on stage.
Yes,
that's good.
I know people find it hard to believe. I told my grandson this the other day. He's 27, and he says, I said, because this article came up from Birmingham in England, and it got shot across here for obvious reasons to me, and I'm pretty sure I sent it to you. It was about the wages of sin.
Yeah.
Did I send it to you? Yeah.
You did.
I did. Yeah. And
so that's the band that you had on your way going to Birmingham.
No, that's the one we had when we left Canada, and we left the Pretty Ones, that whole thing, and Brian and I went back to our hometown in our own home house, actually, where we were born, with my Aunt Hilda, who the song Cousin Mary was written about, one of the most lovely ladies on the planet. And so, of course, she just said, "Come on in." She was like my second mom. She was a wonderful lady. So we went there with the idea that we got to get a band in England, because that's where it was really going on, actually.
Why did you leave Toronto? just because it wasn't really happening and you wanted to go give it a shot there? Maybe stuff was happening over there?
Yes, because I'd gone over a little while. I'd left school in grade 9. I was dissatisfied with things, and I just wanted to go back. I had this thing to want to go back to England and see my Aunt Hilda. And I got a job for a while, and then I realized I happened to be there on the cusp of the entire United Kingdom breaking out in this music.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was very fortunate to the timing was amazing. And
the British invasion.
Yeah, just to witness it in Britain before it even left the country. It hadn't even come out of the country. But I was walking around that country, working and watching all the young lads like me and all playing. Everybody was in a bloody band. Everybody was on a stage somewhere. Bowling alleys, movie theaters, working men's clubs, they called them. There wasn't a spot where a band of some description wasn't. It was like a revolution in Britain of the young people, I think, wanting to, because ever since the Second World War, it was very downtrodden. They lost a lot of stuff, money. Britain paid a big price for that, of course, and the people had suffered for it. And I think kids growing up in an environment just wanted to do something, you know?
All right. Mm-hmm. Play music.
And that passion, well, there'd always been a big musical Brits, you know. There's always a piano in the house and all that. It just seemed to ignite, as it has even in the classical music times of Chopin, when there's terrible things in the world. Music's a pretty damn good, powerful thing in the first place. Mm-hmm. If nothing else, to describe, give us some emotion to it, so we don't explode. But then to take it a step further, the British can literally change the economy of Britain and just give every kid a chance to be something. Right. So when this whole thing came up with the Wages of Sin, it was interesting for us because, shall I keep talking?
Yes, absolutely. No, we are in the Wages of Sin in Birmingham, I believe, and then we're going to go right into hooking up with Cat Stevens, because that's just a killer story.
Yeah, okay. So what ended up happening was that we had the gall. I love the gall of youth, the ignorance of youth, the things you don't know are sometimes the most powerful tools in anybody's box. And I don't mean to be without knowledge and be rude, but it can fire you up to move forward. And one of the things that I loved, we went into this manager's office because Brian and I sat and talked with my friend Tony, who was a bass player, and he was familiar with the scene there. He was playing with people like, you know, Bonham when he was a kid and Plant. They were all friends. They're all Birmingham guys. Awesome. We all got to know eventually. But the funny part was we went into this manager. He's a booking agent. You'd love him there. He had the typical agent sort of, you know, jumping around the room and smoking a cigar or some bloody thing. And he's doing 90 miles an hour. Yeah. Anyway, he got this call coming, and apparently it was a big shock to him. Oh, this band in Germany had canceled at this club, and the guy at the club was freaking out. Do you have anybody? And he's like, I could tell what he was doing. I said, we'll do it. And John, this guy's name's John Singer. I haven't even met him yet. He's just looking over. He knows Tony. And he looks over at Tony and goes, you can do it? And Tony, of course, didn't know what the hell I was talking about, or my brother. And he just said, yeah, we'll do it.
Wow.
So we had 2 weeks to get to Germany and play this gig. We had no band, no equipment, no van, bugger all. And we went back to my aunt's house and made a plan.
So now you're in Birmingham. You left Toronto. You're at your auntie's house, and you're trying to figure out how we're going to get a band together.
You got it. And all of a sudden, we got a gig before we got the band. So this was a challenge. But as I say, I never thought of things back then as being anything other than, I said, okay, well, then we'll do this. The logic just kept going on. It was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to Tony, he knew a great guitarist, and he was. He ended up playing in Fludd over here, actually, Michael Hopkins. And he said, okay, so, and he's willing to come because he liked our singing and Brian and I, what we were doing. We had a couple of rehearsals. I said, well, look, I can't afford to buy drums because I got no money in England. We just got here, Brian's got her guitar and amp, but I didn't have a set of drums. So the logical thing, in my view, was to get a drummer with a set of drums. So Tony knew a good guy, he said. So he came over and he loved us. And we all had this discussion right up to the last damn day almost. And the guitarist had his old grandmother's television delivery van that we just pulled out of the barn, blew the dust off. It didn't get a safety check. Just took the van.
That's cool.
Brought it back to the house, put the gear in it, the drummer loaded up, and I drove all the time then. And I just started to drive to Germany.
Wow. What?
To do this gig, and we were practicing in the van on the way to this gig.
That's awesome, man.
True story.
Wow, that's just that's an incredible story. I mean, those are back in the day, the rock, the 70s. I mean, geez, Louise, just imagine, man, things were so much different then than now. I mean, everything was on hand, right on hand. You know what I mean? Not on hand, but I mean, you had to be there to do it. There was no other way. You had to tour. You had to get out and play.
Well, that's a good way to put it there. You just hit the nail right on the head. The drive, and as I say, the goal. But the obvious drive is like, Bobby, you want to get a job? Well, you got to go out and get it. So there was nothing obscure about that idea. The passion to me that you can get sometimes in your life. It's just the most wonderful bloody thing in the world because there's nothing, you can't be taught that.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
You have
to be there.
You have to know. I'm not talking about education is not important. Of course it is. But there's something, I think, whether it be the kind of people around that drive you to that passion, and obviously your personal passions that you can be born with. But I think it's a lot of things like that, and looking at the right people that make you feel like, God, that's pretty cool what they just did.
Mm-hmm.
Those things are important things to look at, and they're always inspirational. But you're right. We didn't have all the. That's what's a little destructive about now. We know too bloody much. I'd rather not know all the stuff we know. And I don't think kids need to know it either.
Yeah, information's hands-on. Let me read an email to you, Ed. This is from David G. And Dave says, I always enjoyed Fludd and all their tunes throughout the 70s. The one that got my attention wasn't What an Animal, which is one of your tunes. Toward the back half of the tune, it's very creative double guitar solo. Right. Dave says, I always wondered if this was overdubbed or if there's actually two guitar players. It's an awesome instrumental piece, and thanks. And by the way, Dave said, I hired Fludd to play at my high school, Twin Lakes High School in Aurelia, and this was probably the smartest thing I did in or out of class. That's from Dave. Yep, Dave G.
Well, let's tell David, and hopefully he's listening. No, in fact, I was just talking to Gregory tonight, Greg Goddard, and we were talking about guitar players and my brother in particular, because Greg was a dear friend of his, of course. And but how clever he was. He would have potentially been one of the best around. Mm-hmm. He was then. And speaking specifically about What an Animal, like when Brian and Gordy, it was Brian Pilling, my brother, and Gordy Wazik doing that solo, and note for note, and they played it. Brian brought it into the tune, and Wazik, being a much more experienced guitar player, just looked. I remember rehearsing, and Gordy just looked over at Brian and says, "Christ, that's great! I love that." And Brian was just getting his feet wet. He knew where he was going. He certainly wasn't in the category of it like a Gord Wazik. And Gord just almost humbled himself because that's what Gordy's like. My brother's ability. And it was a great working time for those two in the band because the inspiration of Wazik as a guitar player made my brother practice more. And my brother's creativity on the guitar really kept Gord's interest, you know?
Mm-hmm. Sure. So on the song
question, they both played that meticulously well.
That's amazing. There you go, Dave. They both played it. What a great story, Ed.
Yeah, they were the only other. I always bring it up because I have to. Because the only other guitar player, and I'm not saying there's not lots of them. There is, but is Ian Creighton was my the favorite. Interesting. I put him in there. These guys in sort of the vein of Jeff Beck. You know, the world has always idolized Eric Clapton, and he's a wonderful player, wonderful interpreter of the blues. When I hear, as my brother did too, he loved Jeff Beck. Beck was like he's in another place entirely.
Mm-hmm.
He works on that guitar. First of all, he never uses a pick, but he plays it completely different than most people play an electric guitar, in my view.
Yeah, and can you imagine the hours that he spends doing it?
Yeah, well, that's what I got to tell you. Like Gordy Wazik's the same. Gordy used to practice like 6 or 7 hours a day to now, and I'm like, you probably know how to play guitar. And he went through this time where he got this. It was frightening, actually, kind of a carpal tunnel thing, and he couldn't play his guitar at all for like 2 months. His hands went.
Wow.
And I jokingly said, maybe you should cut down on the practice. and his doctor told him the same bloody thing. He said, well, Gordy, just relax till we get this back a bit, and then maybe just a couple hours a day.
Yeah, he was dedicated, no doubt, eh?
Oh, my God. The man is, and he's, I don't know whether you've heard him play much or seen him, but he was the perfect, when he had played in Hotel California, an Eagles band, he was the perfect guy to play all of those solos. He played them note for note.
Right, that's awesome.
He could do it all.
You know what, Ed, let's do this. Let's play a song. Let's play a song. These are actually 2 songs. They kind of blend into each other.
Oh, good,
Come Back Home. And Come Back Home and A Man Like You. I want to play these songs, but when we come back, we'll talk briefly about the songs, my friend, but I also want to talk about Cat Stevens.
Yeah, good enough.
Awesome. Ed, folks, I have Ed Pilling here. Ed, thank you so much for joining me tonight and jumping in. This is Ed's second time on the show, and it's just an absolute honor to have you, Ed. We love you. Thank you for help building the house that we all grew up in, my friend. You have some wonderful music out there, and we all appreciate it. Folks, I have Ed Pilling from the band Fludd on the show. Right now we're going to hear his song, Come Back Home, and A Man Like You, right here on this House of Musicians radio show on Reality Radio 101.
I said something, I hear the words rolling around in my head. Something, oh Lord, what have you said? My love's waiting, will you come back home? I don't know. You're standing on my side of the road, talking to me. Where did you go? I got no time. Stop playing with me now. No time. I just can't let you go. Will you come back? Will you come back home. I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. You're standing on my side of the road, talking to me. Where did you go? Where did you go? Just don't know where you go. You're standing on my side of the road, talking to me. Where did you go? Where did you go? Where did you go? I just don't know where you go. I knew a man like you. He made up all the stories that he wanted to, removing all the facts and putting in a few. A man like you. All kinds of clothes he wore, to most he stood a foot or so above their head, his world suspended by a shining silver thread. A man like you, trying to impress all his known beliefs, he lay them down. Trying to impress all his known beliefs, he lay them down. Wake up and wipe the dew away, it's late from all the crystal grass that grew. Today you'll breathe and walk, and by the way that you, the man I knew, trying to impress all your known beliefs, you lay them down. Trying not in jest, for his only dream it will be found.
Hey, welcome back, folks. I have the wonderful, most dearest man, Mr. Ed Pilling, on the show this evening from the band Fludd. Ed, you've always been so respectful to me and kind to me, and well, I was gracious. You were gracious enough to let me come up and do a live interview with you, which is on YouTube, on This House of Musicians YouTube TV, or This House of Musicians.
That was just fun to do, wasn't it?
It was so much fun, and the video, Dave Clayton worked on the video, and it came out so nice. So, you know what? I really respect you as a human being. Thank you for being so kind to us all.
Oh, listen, if it wasn't for people, we would have, including yourself, you'd have nobody to play to. I mean, I think that's a very important issue about music, and it's such a bonding thing of people. It's the best thing I think we've had in the world forever, frankly.
I couldn't agree more. We just heard, Ed, Come Back Home and A Man Like You. I want to ask you from the LP Fludd, 1971 is when it was released. I want to ask you, so psychedelic. I love both songs. I want to ask you where both those songs came from and how you kind of blended them together and why you think they're kind of one song.
Well, it wasn't that we thought it was one song. Actually, just the man that got us our record contract in the United States with Warner Brothers was a guy called Adam Mitchell, and he was a pretty well-known artist with a group called the Poppers in Toronto for years, and went on to do many great things. Great songwriter, first of all. He ended up being in Nashville, but he was on the West Coast at some point in time with Warner's, and this he was in Toronto. And he came to see us play, and he just loved our Brian and I's songwriting and being a songwriter himself. And he kind of, loved the harmony thing and all that. So he really latched onto us to get us a record, the only one to do it. And he did it. And good for him. And we'll be forever grateful. So we flew to LA, did this album. Come Back Home is just, I've always said about Fludd, we always loved different rhythms, it wasn't always a 4/4 time, and much as I love it, but we grew up liking many feelings of music, different jazz, big band, whatever, just, I don't know, something in there, and it probably came out of the house because Dad played a bit at home, and you grew up with more of a radio time in Britain, I'm sure here too, but we did a lot longer because Britain was behind on getting things like TVs and stuff, but it didn't matter. It was the radio and an in-house piano and just the sheer joy of music, I think. And I don't remember there was a pirate station called Radio Luxembourg because England wouldn't even play rock and roll music at one point. If you can believe this is amazing in our lifetime. So they had this pirate ship sitting 3 miles off the coast of England, playing rock and roll music in the United States. Most of it black. That's how Beatles apparently got all their records of the early stuff from the sailors, American sailors. They'd buy 45s off. So, and then there was Radio Luxembourg in Belgium. So it's so ironic that England had this pretentious, which they were famous for in the oldest aristocratic days, and, us and them, peasants and the upper class. But I think all the cards are in the right place to make England explode in this wonderful way. And, that'll never happen again. It was such an amazing thing to watch, and I was there. And of all things, of course, for it to be music, Barry, how bloody lovely is that?
Oh man, yeah, it's it's the cure for all bad stuff is listening to music. There's so much good music out there, and if you sing and you play, you feel it like right through your whole body and right through your heart. So much stuff comes right out of your heart. I don't think there's a whole bunch of musicians out there. Maybe later on down the road, if they're older and jaded, but there's a lot of musicians out there that do it for the love of just expressing themselves.
Most of them do, and I tell you, and I know I'll get into trouble here, I'm sure, but that's okay. And I listen to people like, some of the people that are promoting music now, that just it's a very commodity driven place to make money. It's not like the past. And I always have to clarify this. Not my time. Like Beethoven and Chopin were pretty good too, and Glenn Miller, he was pretty good. And so whatever we did in the 70s, 60s, there was some great music being written. And when I listen to a lot of, frankly, crap that's not music now, it's a commodity to make money. It's changed quite a bit.
Guaranteed. I mean,
it's just like people know that rather than me just as an older person saying, well, it's not like in my day. That's not the point at all.
Well, definitely times are different now. Like you say, back in the 70s when Bob Dylan was, coming up in the early 60s and the Beatles and stuff. Yeah, man, it was about probably making money when they got to a certain level, but there was still more heart into the music. The Beatles, every album they did what they wanted to play. It wasn't like now where you have a record producer telling you, we want you to do this song. You have a good voice. You know what I mean? I don't think that back in the 70s, that didn't really happen, man. All the bands that came out of all of their hearts, all the musicians.
I don't think they weren't, in other words, I'm saying they weren't playing for money, and I bloody know it. I mean, one of my friends in the early days was Bonham, and fame killed him. He hated it. Mm-hmm. All he wanted was to play drums. He wasn't concerned about the money and the jets. And so 99% of the people that play music, I would say, are like that. Of course, it's good to get money and be able to, help your family, and nobody denounces money. But it certainly isn't why most people play. Except, I remember there was a little article the other day on what a con job Milli Vanilli. I don't know whether you remember that.
Of course.
It was just a big con job. They couldn't sing worth of crap. But you always get corruption, and especially in a business like music. My God, it's so easy. And
there's the other way to look at it too, Ed, is back in the day when Elvis came out, the older folks when Elvis came out, and Little Richard and Jerry Lee Lewis, when these guys all came out, all the older parents were like, "Oh my God, the devil's here!" You know what I mean? And all the kids were rocking in the hamburger shop with their leather jackets and their bebop skirts and stuff, and the parents were like, "Oh my God, the devil's here." And every generation seems to have that too.
One of the things I think that's happened, which was good, if we progress at all, and sometimes I'm concerned that we don't. And when you saw like a Lennon or a Gandhi, there are people that really genuinely get the point across that, just settle down here. Weapons aren't good. Fighting each other is not good. Some pretty obvious things. But on the power of the way these, especially, I'll rather go to Gandhi, to put up with what he did and still have the courage to do what he did. Mm-hmm. That's incredible conviction to me. And there's been some people in the world that will manage to do that. And just getting back to, Lennon was like, I don't know why he picked, I said it in one little thing I mentioned, he picked the wrong country to give all this love to, because they were trying to keep him out of America. They didn't like him. They didn't like anybody saying anything, or Jesus or God or, oh my God, they're still there, that we should be in a better world than that. And I think we are here.
Yeah, you know what? You chalk that up to one crazy bugger that had something wrong with his head and went and killed him. I get it, man. But he was being definitely. If we're talking about Lennon, he was definitely being ridiculed when he was trying to give peace a chance. And you look back at it now. You look back at it now, and you go to yourself. You say to yourself, "What a saint this guy was."
Yes, of course. But I was looking at keeping him out of the country because he didn't like what he was talking about. It's like,
well, he was definitely a little ahead of his time, Ed? Because they weren't ready for a peace guy like that. You know what I mean? He was way ahead of his time. If he would have came out 10 years later, everyone would have been on board.
Well, now come on, they have gone through some of the great black leaders in the world trying to promote peace, and other people in the world. John was just part of a rock and roll band that, frankly, kind of pissed off the Beach Boys.
Absolutely.
I remember
And
Mike
what a
Love.
great band.
Mike Love. No, but I don't know whether you remember this or not, and I'll probably get into more trouble now. Mike Love was the worst, even by Brian Wilson standards. I heard him talk. They didn't like each other. Mike Love was one of those pretentious people, if you will. And he didn't, an American person, pretentious, because he didn't epitomize most of Americans. The minute the Beatles came out, he hated them because two of these guys from England were the kings of and that's how he acted. It was such a bad behavioral process. It was, the Brits band, mostly, especially the Beatles, they admired every American, bloody Elvis, all the black, everybody walking that planet. Okay? And the Beach Boys, they thought, remember McCartney saying, and he's right, God Only Knows is What I'd Do Without You. He thought it was one of the greatest songs ever written, that Brian Wilson. But that's not Mike Love. He's the twit in front with the tambourine. So he was a terrible. This is what happens when that's an American band. Brian Wilson and all the people, the geniuses doing all this great stuff, and one mouthpiece out front can destroy the entire image of that genuine thought. And I think that happens a lot in the United States. Too many people.
Well, it happen. I'm sure it happens all over the world. There's assholes everywhere, isn't there, Ed? So you just have to.
The problem is the United States is a powerful country, and if you're talking, I just look at the world like a big family. Okay, Grandpa's up here, which in a sense, from what I understand, military and power and money is the United States. But they do hold a certain position of needing some respect. So, and from what I've read, Trump's gone, with Biden in, they've gained a lot more respect back in the world because you can't have a grandfather running a place like a lunatic.
Right. Well, Ed, let's not talk about politics. I'm going to stick to music here, my man. I know how strong you feel about it because we have our conversations. I don't disagree. I don't disagree with you,
Barry. I love bikinis.
So there you go. You know what? I have a couple of more emails here, Ed. Let me read you one. Yep, this is from Brenda and Brenda N. Brenda N says, "Hey, Ed is such a history here in Canada. He's a really talented singer-songwriter. A lot of folks really enjoy what he's done over the many decades." Did I say decades? So sorry, Ed. I mean to say we have 78 when you started recording. Love you, man. That's from Brenda.
Well, Brenda, the fact that we can even say that over decades is just a bloody pleasure to me, and that's the entire reason why I started on this journey in the first place. And I feel so privileged. Barry knows this. If you play anything, especially if you play your music, but if you play it all, when people appreciate what you're doing and you make them feel good, there's no greater feeling in the world.
Even if it's one person. If I write a song and sing it to one person, they smile and say, "That's a good song." I'm good. I'm good with that. So I can't imagine walking out on stage with 30,000 people screaming your lyrics of songs that you wrote. I mean, that would just be crazy. And you were there. So here's what I want you to do, man. I got a couple of more emails, but I want you, Ed, my friend, I want you to tell me, let's talk about Cat Stevens and any crazy stories along that journey you took with Cat Stevens.
Well, the craziest one really was, one wasn't crazy. It was just, had a full of mystique. I think I told you this. We were brought down by his brother to London, which amazed me that he'd pick us with all that was going on in Britain at the time, but that was quite flattering. Because he was big in England then. doing I Love My Dog and Matthew and Son way before Tea for the Tillerman. He was huge at 16 years old.
Wow.
And so it comes in, and we've been rehearsing in the pub above the pub. His brother got us a space, said, I'll bring Cat around this afternoon. You can have a listen to what you're doing. I said, okay. So these three songs, three of new songs at the time, I can't remember them. And we did a harmony thing, did an arrangement. We put him down the best we could. He came in. Now, I always remember him walking through the door with his brother. He had this big, long fur coat and sunglasses. And he's only like 4'2". But, he looked like this rock and roll star. And we're a bit intimidated because we knew Cat Stevens was a big deal in England, right?
Wow.
And he's coming to listen to us, see what we did with his tunes. So, okay. And Christ, the minute we finished playing them, took his sunglasses off. He smiled his face and he said, let's go and have a pint. And just became a human being instantly. But the unfortunate part for him, he got incredible fame at a very young age. Went to his place that he lived in London, above his father's, because he was great to have this restaurant. And he told me a couple of stories how he played a couple of things on piano and then he reversed them on a tape, put them in reverse. There seemed to be a lot of that going on back then. That created a new melody for that. And he would use that melody that was in reverse as the start of the song. And I thought that was clever. That was kind of interesting. But anyway,
the Beatles did that a lot too, right?
Well, they did it. They didn't
with full songs.
Well, they didn't do it anything I've ever read. He was the first guy that told me he did it to get a melody in reverse. The Beatles did it more with the guitar things, effects. They put some of their lyrics that were already written, then they reversed that. But they didn't use the reverse position to create the melody in the first place, if you know what I mean. Anyway, so it was a bit of a different approach, but it was still clever nonetheless. And when we flew out of London to go to do the Paris Olympia, it's kind of the equivalent to the Maple Leaf Gardens of Toronto. We were playing with Zoot Money and Spencer Davis and all the big rock guys. We went on stage with him, and I wasn't on the stage because the band was backing him. And then then I would come out in front, and then I'd be us. That's how they worked it back in those days. So he came out and he went on first. In fact, after, Zoot Money, in the line of things, he wasn't concerned whether he went on first or last with us. So he went on. Anyway, he got a good applause. Everything went well. He had hit records. But when we went on, we kind of blew him off. And I was running around like a crazy person and setting fire to the stage. And it was when things were switching over. And of course, that's why he was smart enough to bring us as a band in the first place, rather than him sitting on a stool, because the psychedelic thing and everything was changing. He knew he would. So that was a very clever move on his behalf for us to back him in the first place. Made sense. And that bloody, there's a little snippet of him singing with my brother, First Cut is the Deepest, on your cell phone, which you can get. Cat Stevens, 1969, Paris Olympia, First Cut is the Deepest, and that's Wages of Sin.
That's cool.
Just bizarre.
Crazy. That's amazing. So how long did you tour with Cat Stevens?
Not very long, just a couple of weeks, a week while we were over there. And then he kind of lost it. I was going to continue that. So when we got off stage, that particular night, the first night, came down the dressing room, and he basically had to drink a bottle of vodka to play because he hated being on stage. And So when he came down, the dressing room realized we had got a pretty good applause. He was pissed off. Remember, he's 16, and he got another bottle of vodka, drank a lot of it, threw it against the wall, and we just sort of cuddled him and nursed him back to the hotel room where we smoked a hash joint and kind of just went to bed.
Wow. That's crazy. That's a great story. And look what's happened since. I mean, like, you came back, you had Fludd, you had some hit songs. Cat Stevens had lots of hit songs. Just amazing, that you had an intertwine with Cat Stevens and be touring with him. And that probably didn't hurt you guys either. That's a good little, rep.
Well, the only thing that did to us, Terry, because and hindsight is one thing, but had we not left and gone with him for that short trip, because when we got back to London, he just put us on a hiatus and was going to pay for a room for staying and all that. But the way our band was screamingly going along to go somewhere.
Right.
And we had left an entire year's worth of booking in Birmingham. A year we were booked ahead. That's pretty stunning. And we walked down on it because we also believed in opportunity knocks. And why would Cat Stevens, we got to do this. And
of course you'd take the opportunity. Who wouldn't?
Yeah, I believe in that too. Not a matter of, okay, you screwed up the agent a little bit, but he can book a new band, and it's not like the end of the world. But you have to see opportunity not. You've got to open that door at the very least. And unfortunately, what he did, but again, in the big picture, maybe it was the right time. He broke up our band in England, and we were all in London, and we decided right then we can't to go back to Birmingham. They're really going to be the agents. It probably would have worked out fine anyway, but we just were so disillusioned by everything. We were pissed off, and we just sort of said, okay, we made a bed. We got to line it. So the lads went back to Toronto, or to Birmingham, three of them, and Brian and I came back to Canada.
Yep, and you guys started Fludd, and man, let's talk about this next song I want to play right now. Yep, Brother and Me, man, I love this tune. It's a single from 1974. Why don't we just go ahead and play that, Ed? And I want to talk about Brother and Me when we come back. I absolutely adore this song.
Wonderful, thanks.
Folks, I have Ed Pilling from the band Fludd on the show this evening, and what a gentleman Ed is. I want to play one of his tunes, Brother and Me. Again, it's a single from 74. Have a listen to this. I absolutely love this song. And you're listening to this House of Musicians radio show right here on Reality Radio 101.
Drinking around, it was a holiday. Sailing along, up and down the tiny bay. Breaking the waves on the money we saved, it was a holiday. Nothing to do now, leading the grand old life. Sitting back, enjoying so well, instead of making love to help me sleep at night. Make
Welcome back, folks. I have Ed Pilling from the band Fludd on the show tonight. Ed, tell me about Brother and Me. It's that psychedelic air, that song that's just everlasting. I just love it. It's a single from '74, Brother and Me. Tell me how that all came about.
Well, it's one of those little things that Brian and I, when you write together, it's very hard to explain. You just gotta do it. I've heard many people, way better people than myself, like Paul Simon or McCartney or anybody that's been asked the question, how do you write a song? You just can't answer it. There's so many ways it just comes to you, apparently. And that sort of made me feel better because I thought, okay, somewhat of an answer. In the middle of the night, you keep a little cassette recorder beside your table, or in the old days, or, yep. As long as I jot something down lyrically or hum a melody, I can have a recall place. But if I don't do that, and I've heard all these people I've just spoken about, including Stevie Wonder, if you didn't capture that moment in your mind, you would forget it. So I thought, oh, that's how it works. At least we got that part of it. So,
back in the day, you used to have... Go ahead. Sorry, Ed.
Yeah. I remember reading about Stevie Wonder driving around with, he had his cassette player. He'd put down 15 ideas a day, which I could, if you're sitting in the car doing nothing, I'd get that too.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. He put that little riff or whatever he needed. Have you ever found that? You wake up in the night and you write down that little piece of wording, or as I say, to just record it?
I have done that. Done that, and I've also woken up in the morning with a hit song in my head and woke up and forgot it. That's happened too. Those are those ones really hurt.
Exactly.
Those ones really hurt because you're like, this is a hit song. It's a Beatles, McCartney, Lennon song or something. It's going to be that great, and then you wake up and you forget what it was, man. I hate when that happens.
Well, it's bloody perfect though. You're not alone, kid, because if you don't capture that moment, apparently your brain, which we've all found out about, which is very interesting, the brain has a different place where music is, and this is why they're using it to help Alzheimer's patients, and it's in a different place, and they can bring a song to an Alzheimer's patient, and that person will remember every lyric, and they won't even know who their son or daughter is. So it's an interesting concept. But
absolutely, it sure is.
Getting back to Brother and Me, we both, getting away was like minuscule in those days. So you sort of fantasize getting a holiday. And I think Brian went away with Mom at one point. He got just to get her away. Anyway, he came back and he had these ideas about a holiday and that. And I was thinking, yeah, cool. But all of a sudden, he was going down the road of Mother and Me, had a week beside the two. And I didn't think that was the best idea. No, I'm not kidding.
Song turned out good.
Well, it didn't kind of fit anything at that point in time. And I said, like, if you and I went away on a holiday, would be great. We don't get to do it.
Maybe one day.
Yeah. And then, of course, that's why the bridge, being nothing to do now, being in the grand old life, kind of being in rock and roll, but instead of making love to help you sleep at night, it's more enjoyable to enjoy the trip and then just perhaps having a little fantasy after a gig and go to sleep. Like, that's not relaxing. I can remember I had a girlfriend for a long time. And I went away with her once, I think, to the Bahamas. And all I did for the 6 days we were there, was sit in and jam with the local bands playing congos and things.
That's good experience, though.
Oh, it was great. And she said, well, I'd like to be relaxing. I said, well, I don't have to be at the gig on time, and I'm not getting paid. And they'll let me come out and just play some percussion, so that's fun.
That's great, man. That's awesome. You've had such a great career. I just want to, there's a segment of my show I do called, we're going to go a little late. Well, Gary, what do you think?
Well, what I think, let me tell you what I think, Ed. I could sit and listen to the stories all night long. Now, that's entertainment because there's so much history with you. And a lot of people that are into this business nowadays, the modernites, we'll call them, they really, no offense, but as you said, they have no idea of the history of music, musicology, what brought on a song, what brought on artists, bands, old record labels, how we used to record. And I could listen I could listen to those stories all night just to learn and absorb from you. So hats off to you. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you, my friend. You know what we're talking about here, which is that's what is respect. I think if people genuinely do what they're doing in their lives, it's not hard to respect them. Mm-hmm. But I think there's not enough people doing that for us to perhaps create more of a respectful tone. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm sure the bloody media doesn't help that at all. But
right.
I've always felt most people I've always met in my entire life, on any racial, color, nationality, anywhere I've ever been, have just been basically the same as me.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. I think there's way more good people out there. Way more good people, for sure.
Yeah. And they've just never been spoken for. And frankly, that's exactly why I played rock and roll.
Well, you had an amazing career, Bud. Now, I got 2 or 3 more emails to read. I want to read them because I want people that send in. I want to be able to read anybody that sends in an email. This is from Eric M. Eric says, Fludd had to have the best harmonies ever. So smooth, so perfect. Great Beatles influence. It shows. Love the music. That's from Eric.
That a boy, Eric.
This is from Don D. Don says, hello tonight from Selma, Alabama. What was the most starstruck individual that Ed met, and where was it? Thanks.
Well, I wasn't starstruck, but it's only because Brian and I got to see Robert Plant and John Bonham at Masonic Temple in Toronto. If we knocked on the back door to tell John and Robert, didn't know the other two, Page and Jones, how blown away we were that they got in this band called Led Zeppelin. And by the way, it's the Pilling brothers. This is where we live. And John Bonham stuck his head out the window and says, "Fuck yes, get up here." And we sat and spoke to them that night. And actually, Plant came back and stayed at my place. And just it was a pleasure. It's not Star Trek. It's the wrong question.
Wow, man. That's pretty damn cool, man, to have Robert Plant stay at your house. Oh, my God. Well done, Ed.
I gotta say,
but you were in that scene with them guys, so.
I got to tell you the funny thing about this stuff, because it is right out of, one of the movie scripts. He's in there in my place, and he said, and he liked this pot. He said, "Do you know anybody's got any pot?" I said, "Well, actually, the bloke lives next door. He's a pot dealer at the building." And Larry's, and I said, "Yeah, no problem. I'll go get you some." It's about 2 a.m. They finished their gig. And I go next, and he said, "Do you mind if I come with you?" And he said, "Okay." So he walks over next door to this bloke, Larry's place. I knock on Larry's door. I said, "Hi, Larry. He goes, you got any pot?" And there's, the smell of pot and drugs and the lessening of the music volume. Oh, they're crashing now. And Larry looks at the plant behind. I said, "Oh, and this is Robert, and that's Larry." Okay. And he said, "Yeah, I've got that." He gives us an ounce of pot, and we see you later. Went back home. Obviously had a couple of joints and all that, and Robert left the next day.
That's awesome, man.
I ran into Larry, and he says, "Ed, did you come by my house last night with a man called Robert Planet?"
Planet.
I said, "Yes." He said, "Fuck! That I told everybody it was unconscious on the couch. It was just here, Robert Planet. No, can't you see this whole scenario going on in his apartment?" And they all think, "You got to stop taking drugs, Larry." And then it was like fucking years after that people would come up to me and ask me about this story I guess they were there that night with Larry, and say, "Was that Robert?" "Yeah, it was. He just happened to be at my house that night."
That's just crazy, man. That's amazing. I got another email here, Ed, from Sean. Sean says, "Who is Ed's favorite vocalist of all time, and who would he love to work with?"
I think, all the Beatles are great vocalists, but, and I'd like to work with anybody along that line. But I got to tell you, Tina Turner is my favorite rock and roll lady on the planet. And she is such a deserved person, if you will. She went through hell on earth, came from, and Gary, don't get upset, a country that, a country that's been dealing with this for a fucking long time. And she loves living in Switzerland and with a white guy, and she's respected. And I've never seen, I don't think, anybody on stage more energetic than that person in my entire life. She's stunning.
So you'd like to do a duet with Tina Turner then? That's what I'm hearing.
Yes, of course I would.
And of course, it'll have to be a song that you write, Ed, and then you'll get huge royalties, man.
You know what? I love all the Beatles. But I swear I would love to do a song with Tina Turner.
That's awesome.
She's just she's an amazing person, and I love. You know what I admire about her as much as anything? Her mindset was so clear how she was going, and she'd come through all the poppycock of the race in the United States. The men thing, she'd gone through it all, and she's living in this lovely, quiet, lovely place, Switzerland, where they love her. She doesn't have to be worried about being shot. I mean, and she's just, and she's had a tough few years with her health too. That's why she quit touring. She would have kept going.
I think she's getting up. I think she's getting up there, Ed. I remember Tina Turner when I was a little kid, and I'm not big sick. But Ed, what can I say, man? You are just as special to us as anybody, man, that's been on the show. You've always been an absolute gentleman to me, as I said previously. Whenever I talked to you on the phone, it's been an absolute honor to have you on the show, Ed. And I'm going to stay in touch with you, man. Thank you for being here.
My pleasure, Barry. Anytime at all.
Thank you, Ed. And to the listener, I say...
By the way, I'm going to send you a couple of snippets of my new stuff.
You know what? I can't wait to hear your new stuff, because when you get a few new songs out, let me know, and we're going to get you back on the show and talk about those songs. I can't wait. So you're going to go in and record them then?
Oh, I will get them done, yeah.
Awesome, buddy. Ed, thank you so much, man. It's our honor to have you.
Pleasure indeed.
We'll be talking, bud. And to the listener, I say thank you for being here, and always dance and sing, and let the music bring your soul to the surface for all the world to see. Until next time, have a shuffle your feet kind of week, and good night. You've been listening to This House of Musicians radio show on Reality Radio 101.
And wiggle your bum.